single morning in the autumn of 1307 changed the course of European history. Before the bells of Paris had finished their first call to prayer, armed men were already moving through the narrow streets, carrying sealed orders from the king. Their targets were not criminals, nor invading armies, but monks. Warrior monks. Men who had once sworn to poverty and obedience, yet who now controlled a financial and military empire that stretched from the Scottish Highlands to the shores of the Holy Land. By nightfall, hundreds of them would be in chains, accused of crimes so shocking they would stain their name for centuries. This was the beginning of the end of the Knights Templar. To understand how an order of devout warriors rose so high and fell so brutally, we have to return more than 200 years earlier, to a city that was both sacred and soaked in blood. In 1099, after years of brutal campaigning, Christian armies captured Jerusalem during the First Crusade. For the Christian world of medieval Europe, this victory was nothing less than miraculous. The city where Christ had lived, preached, and died was once again under Christian control. Almost immediately, pilgrims began pouring in from across the continent. Nobles, peasants, widows, and priests all undertook the dangerous journey to see the holy sites with their own eyes. But the road to Jerusalem was long, violent, and unforgiving. Pilgrims had to cross lands that were still contested by Muslim and Christian forces. Bandits preyed on the weak. Armed groups, loyal to neither side, attacked caravans without mercy. Many pilgrims were robbed, wounded, or killed before they ever reached the city. The Holy Land might have been liberated, but it was far from safe. Out of this chaos emerged a small group of men with a radical idea. In 1118, a French knight named Hugues de Payens gathered 8 companions, most of them relatives or close associates, and offered their services to the King of Jerusalem. Their purpose was simple: to protect Christian pilgrims as they travelled to and from the holy sites. They called themselves the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, a name that reflected both their religious devotion and their military role. These men were not ordinary soldiers. They were something entirely new in the medieval world. They were monks who fought. They took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, just like any monk in a monastery. But instead of withdrawing from the world, they rode into battle. They carried swords instead of prayer books, and they lived under a strict code that blended religious discipline with military order. King Baldwin II of Jerusalem gave them a headquarters in the heart of the holy city. It was a former palace built on the Temple Mount, a site believed to stand over the ruins of the ancient Temple of Solomon. From this location, the order took on a powerful symbolic identity. They became known simply as the Templars, guardians of a sacred legacy, as well as armed defenders of Christendom. At first, the order was small and poor. Their equipment was simple, their numbers limited. But their reputation for discipline and devotion began to spread. In 1129, their mission received formal recognition from the Church at the Council of Troyes. A poet, Bernard of Clairvaux, wrote a passionate treatise praising this new knighthood, arguing that fighting for God was not a sin, but a holy duty. With papal approval, the Templars became the first officially recognized military order in Christian history. They were directly answerable only to the Pope. This gave them an extraordinary level of independence. Kings could not command them. Bishops could not control them. Their loyalty belonged to the Church and to their own Grand Master. Men from across Europe rushed to join. Some were nobles with famous family names. Others were younger sons who stood to inherit nothing. A few were veterans of previous campaigns, hardened by war but drawn by the promise of spiritual redemption. The entry requirements were strict. A man had to be freeborn, and in later centuries, knights had to prove noble lineage. He could not be in debt. Often, he was expected to donate land, money, or valuable goods to the order when he joined. Once, his life changed forever. The Templar rule governed every aspect of daily existence. He wore simple clothing, avoided luxury, and lived under constant discipline. He was forbidden from gambling, swearing, or indulging in worldly pleasures. Even small acts, such as wearing decorative belts or brightly coloured clothing, were prohibited. His beard was left untrimmed, his hair kept short. He was not allowed to kiss women, not even his own mother. His life was to be one of spiritual purity and absolute focus. Prayer structured the day, but so did training. The Templars were not ceremonial warriors. They were among the most feared and respected fighters of their age. On the battlefield, they operated as shock troops, leading charges against enemy lines. Their rules forbade retreat unless they were overwhelmingly outnumbered or explicitly ordered to withdraw. To turn one's back on the enemy was not just cowardice. It was a sin. Their reputation grew during the Crusades. They fought in some of the bloodiest and most decisive battles of the era. Muslim commanders came to recognize the white cloaks with the red cross as a sign that elite warriors were present. Templars captured in battle were often executed, not because they were hated, but because they were too dangerous to leave alive. Yet, for all their martial prowess, the Templars were also administrators, engineers, and managers. They built castles across the Holy Land and Europe. They oversaw farms, mills, vineyards, and entire towns. They employed craftsmen, shipbuilders, and armourers. Their organisation was complex, with ranks that extended far beyond the knights who rode into battle. Priests, labourers, and even women affiliated with the order supported its vast network of operations. Wealth began to flow into their hands. Donations came from every level of society. Medieval Christians believed that giving to holy causes could help secure their place in heaven. Land, money, livestock, precious metals, and military equipment poured into Templar coffers. The order reinvested this wealth with remarkable sophistication. They bought productive properties, funded commercial ventures, and developed one of the most advanced financial systems in the medieval world. In an age when carrying large amounts of gold was dangerous, the Templars offered a revolutionary service. A pilgrim could deposit money at a Templar house in his home country and receive a written credit. He could then travel to the Holy Land and withdraw an equivalent amount at another Templar house. This early form of banking and international finance made long-distance travel far safer and more practical. Kings and nobles also turned to the Templars for loans. Wars were expensive, and monarchs were often short on ready cash. The Templars, with their vast reserves and reliable administration, became the preferred bankers of Europe's elite. They held royal treasuries, financed campaigns, and managed complex financial transactions that no other institution of the time could handle. By the late 13th century, the order's influence was immense. They owned lands across the continent. They commanded fleets of ships. They controlled key ports and trade routes. In some regions, they were wealthier than entire kingdoms. And yet, they were not subject to the laws of those kingdoms. They answered only to the Pope. This combination of wealth, military power, and independence made them powerful. It also made them dangerous in the eyes of rulers who owed them money. The Crusades, meanwhile, were going badly. Muslim forces under leaders like Saladin gradually reclaimed territory. Jerusalem fell again. One by one, the Crusader strongholds collapsed. In 1291, the city of Acre, the last major Christian foothold in the Holy Land, was taken. The Templars retreated to Cyprus and then shifted their main headquarters to Europe, particularly to Paris. They were now a military order without a battlefield. Their original purpose, the defense of pilgrims in the Holy Land, had largely vanished. What remained was their wealth, their influence, and their financial network. In France, this was a problem. King Philip Intravenoso, known as Philip the Fair, a kingdom that was deeply in debt. Years of war and extravagant spending had drained the royal treasury. Philip owed enormous sums to the Templars. He needed more money, but he had no collateral left to offer. At the same time, resentment toward the order was growing. Some churchmen accused them of arrogance and corruption. Rival religious orders envied their privileges. Secular rulers feared their autonomy. Rumours began to circulate, dark and sensational stories about secret rituals and heretical beliefs. In 1307, Philip made his move. On Friday, October 13th, royal agents arrested Templars across France in a coordinated operation. The charges were shocking. The knights were accused of denying Christ, of engaging in obscene initiation rituals, of worshipping idols, and of committing acts of sexual immorality. These accusations were designed to horrify the medieval public and justify extreme measures. Under torture, some prisoners confessed. Pain can make men say almost anything. Even the Grand Master of the Order, Jacques de Molay, was forced to meet crimes he would later deny. The Pope, Clement V, was under intense pressure from the French king. Though he initially hesitated, he eventually ordered the arrest of Templars throughout Western Europe and the seizure of their property. Trials followed. They were brutal and deeply unfair. The accused were often denied legal counsel and supporting witnesses. Confessions extracted under torture were treated as evidence. In 1310, dozens of Templars were burned alive in Paris after maintaining their innocence. For years later, Jacques de Molay and another senior leader were executed in the same way. According to legend, de Molay called down God's judgment on the king and the Pope as he died. Both men were dead within a year, fueling the myth that the Templars had been cursed. In 1312, the Pope formally dissolved the order. Most of its property was transferred to the Knights Hospitaller, though in practice much of it was taken by kings and nobles. Philip IV emerged free of his debts and richer than before. The Knights Templar, once the most powerful military and financial institution in Christendom, were no more. Yet their story did not end there. In the centuries that followed, rumours and legends flourished. Some claimed the Templars had hidden vast treasures. Others believed they had guarded sacred relics like the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant. Whether these stories have any truth is uncertain. What is certain is that the rise and fall of the Templars changed Europe forever, shaping the relationship between money, power, and faith in ways that are still felt today. Subscribe to the channel to follow more stories like this. Like the video, share it, and leave a comment with your suggestions for future themes or historical figures you would like to see explored.